It feels good to be back on set breaking down episodes of Dexter with all of you folks, so let's get into it. We open on a cold open, which is apparently what they're calling cutaways these days. And we see that Kurt Caldwell is trying to drop off his daughter at her mother's house. She says she doesn't want to go because she wants to spend the night with him, but he tells her that he has somewhere he needs to be and he lines pick her up later. In voiceover, Dexter explains that there are very few things that are more important than family. And one of those things for him is the annual Big Iron Rodeo. It's a Texas tradition that his father used to take him to when he was younger. Apparently, it's so important that Dexter makes sure his work schedule aligns with the event every single year. You know, just another reminder that Dexter is a real boy. Meanwhile, over at the station, we find out that Batista is being treated like garbage by his new boss, Major Palmer Trinity. Oh, right off the bat, I love the casting of this character. Clancy Brown is an incredible actor who I associate primarily with two roles, Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob SquarePants and the iconic portrayal of serial killer Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. So now anytime I see Clancy Brown, I instantly think of both talking nonsense as a greedy capitalist pig and skinning people alive while wearing a dress. And here he is playing a no-nonsense police captain who is not afraid to speak his mind or berate his subordinates. Anyway, Batista is understandably upset when he hears that his friend and colleague Angel has been passed over for a promotion in favor of a young, inexperienced officer named Logan. But Captain Clancy Brown reminds Batista that he's old enough to qualify for retirement and that he should consider hanging up his badge before he gets hurt or worse. Now meanwhile, Dexter is getting ready to head out to the rodeo when his son Harrison enters the picture, asking for permission to go along. Of course, Dexter says yes, even though he knows that exposing his son to the grisly spectacle of a public execution is not exactly kid-friendly. But then Hannah enters and tells Harrison that he's not allowed to go because he's grounded. For what? We don't know, but I would assume that it has to do with him feeding live pigs to the school bully. So Dexter lets Harrison stay home with Hannah while he heads off to the rodeo alone. What could possibly go wrong? At the rodeo, Dexter manages to secure a seat close to the stage where the featured performer is none other than Kurt Caldwell, aka the Trashman Killer. And I'm glad to report that the writers remembered that the Trashman lived in a trailer and made sure to include a scene where he struggles to maneuver his large frame through the narrow door. This show is known for its intelligence. Anyway, after disposing of some food in the trash, Dexter slips away from his seat and sneaks backstage in order to catch a glimpse of Kurt in his natural habitat. But he finds something even better, a discarded hat that definitely belonged to Kurt. Dexter runs some tests on the hat in his own makeshift crime lab and discovers a small amount of blood that was smeared on the outside. And after comparing the DNA profile to samples from previous crime scenes, he confirms that it matches Kurt Caldwell. So not only does Dexter now have physical evidence linking Kurt to the murders, but he also has motive, opportunity, means, and an airtight alibi. So I'd say he's got a pretty solid case. But unfortunately for Dexter, he's about to make a major mistake. When he returns home that night, Hannah is furious to discover that he let Harrison attend the rodeo despite her protests. So instead of comforting her and explaining why it was important for Harrison to see firsthand what a monster can do, he lectures her about being a bad influence on his son and jeopardize his future happiness. And I am just sitting here thinking, if this is how Dexter treats the woman he loves and the child he's responsible for, then how does he expect either of them to respect or even like him? Like, I've been on quite a few long-term projects in my day job as a writer, and I've heard countless pitches that just fell flat because they lacked emotional stakes. But now that Dexter has entered the picture, I'm legitimately concerned for his well-being. Because if he loses the people he cares about, then what's the point of all this? In an attempt to make amends with Harrison, Dexter takes him out for ice cream and bonding time, during which he reaffirms his belief that people can be rehabilitated and that criminals can turn their lives around. Again, this seems to be a very important theme for this episode, as Batista is also attempting to help a troubled youth by mentoring his son about the qualities to look for in a role model. And speaking of Batista, he's not having any luck of his own when it comes to fixing his failing marriage. In fact, his wife tells him that she's given up on their relationship and has already moved on. But Batista refuses to quit the fight, and in one of the more heartwarming moments of the episode, he listens to his son's advice and decides to throw himself back into his work. That's right, kid, just follow your gut. You never know. It might lead to something great. Dexter, on the other hand, is not able to repair his relationship with Harrison, who is still grounded for being a little psychopath. So Dexter decides to take matters into his own hands and breaks into Angel's house to steal some blood from his refrigerator. And since Dexter doesn't know his way around the kitchen, he accidentally spills most of it on the floor. But don't worry, because he managed to collect enough to run a DNA test and confirm that it belongs to Lumen. With this new evidence in hand, Dexter goes straight to Captain Clancy Brown, who listens to his claims and promises to look into it. But Dexter, being Dexter, isn't willing to wait for the police to take action. So he heads back home and puts together a recording system that allows him to spy on Kurt Caldwell. And what does he see? Kurt going to a bar and picking up a random woman and bringing her back to his house. So I guess you could say that Dexter is feeling a bit jealous. In my opinion, this is a really strange decision by the writers because it undermines everything that Dexter stands for. Dexter is a man who prides himself on his ability to remain calm and rational in difficult situations. And yet here he is acting irrationally and making reckless decisions driven by jealousy. I don't buy it. And I think it would have made much more sense if they had Dexter use a different method to spy on Kurt, such as hacking into his phone or social media accounts or simply following him at a safe distance. And speaking of hacking, this week's installment of Lumen's backstory shows her developing feelings for her coworker Matt, but ultimately deciding against pursuing anything romantic with him out of fear that she drag him down. And I feel like that's a very unfair assessment because Matt seems like a genuinely nice guy who could probably use someone like Lumen in his life to bring some excitement and spice things up. Plus, they share a passion for computers and hacking, which could be a great foundation for a healthy, long-lasting relationship. Don't give up on love, Lumen. In the end, Dexter's plan to spy on Kurt fails when Hannah accidentally deletes the footage. But fortunately, he does not need it because Kurt makes the dumb decision to call Dexter a hero after he saves him from an angry mob of townspeople who are seeking revenge for their children's deaths. After Kurt gives his speech, Dexter reveals himself and announces that he's there to take Kurt into custody. But Kurt isn't worried. He pulls out a gun and fires at Dexter, who narrowly misses and flees. So now our boy Dexter is on the run and in big trouble. Can he escape Kurt's clutches? Or will this be the end of the road for him? Find out next time on Dexter Morgan, why he's in danger now. Stay tuned for more updates.